Welcome to Tales of Yesteryear with Lizzie Parker, a show all about history, mythology, and the lives and enduring tales of those who came before us. I'm your host, Lizzie Parker. I'm currently sat fireside in our Yesteryear library with my cozy blanket, hot cocoa, and today's tale. So I invite you to join me today. Grab a beverage and a blanket of your own as we dive into the tale of Juana I of Castile. Juana was born November 6, 1479 in Toledo, Castile, in what is now modern-day Spain, the third child to Queen Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon. Toledo in 1479 was noticeably influenced by Islamic culture. Ancient mosques of Bab al-Mardom, Mudehar synagogues, and Mudehar churches stood within the city walls, echoes of lifetimes past. However, the Spanish Inquisition began just 1 year prior to Juana's birth, and life for Spanish Muslims would only grow increasingly troubled over the next 20 years as Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain, fell, and Islam became outlawed in various parts of the now united Spain in stages. Juana would grow up in a violent transitional period for the residents of Castile and Aragon, but she would be kept removed from the suffering of most of her citizens. Toledo was a city rife with history, religious tension, echoes of battles past, and served as one of Juana's many childhood homes, and Muslims became faced with a choice: conversion or exile. The court of Isabella I and Ferdinand II was unlike the court that you might imagine when thinking of royal courts of Europe during the same era. Unlike royal courts of France or England, for example, Isabella I and Ferdinand II did not have one established royal residence at which their court primarily resided. Instead, the pair opted for an itinerant court, that is, a court that would travel from place to place regularly. While growing up at court, Juana was well educated in subjects such as Latin, etiquette, and religious studies. Little has been documented about Juana's childhood and upbringing, an unfortunate consequence of being born a daughter in 15th century Europe, and a third-born child at that. Juana was not expected, nor had she likely anticipated the fate that would await her in the future. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In 1495, just shy of her 16th birthday, Juana would be wed in a double alliance with Burgundy. Juana's older brother Juan, heir to Castile and Aragon, would be wed to Margaret of Burgundy, and Juana would be wed to Margaret's brother Philip, Duke of Burgundy. Juana sailed to meet her husband in Burgundy in 1496, with Margaret of Burgundy sailing to Spain upon Juana's arrival. While acting as Duchess of Burgundy and Archduchess of Austria, Juana gave birth to her daughter Lenore, or Eleanor depending on which account you're reading, in 1498 at the age of 19. She gave birth to her son Charles in 1500 at the age of 20. However, between 1500 and 1501, Juana's older brother Juan died without an heir, as did her elder sister Isabella's only child, her son Miguel. Sadly, her sister Isabella died in childbirth in 1498. This series of tragedies would alter the course of Juana's life irrevocably. She became the heir to the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon in 1501. However, Juana would not come to inherit either of the kingdoms until 1504, when, upon her mother's death, she inherited the throne of Castile. Juana and Philip would delay their departure to Castile until after the birth of their daughter Maria in 1505. When the couple arrived in Castile, Juana was kept away from her husband and her father while the two men sought to resolve the question of governance in Castile. This issue ultimately came down to a battle of wills between the two men as they both sought to have Juana declared unfit to rule Castile and have themselves declared ruler of Castile in her stead. Ultimately, in 1506, Ferdinand signed the Via Favila agreement, in which Philip was declared the monarch of Castile in place of Juana. 2 weeks later, Castilian officials would swear their loyalty to Philip and Juana, and their son Charles was declared their legal heir. Tragically, Philip would die a short time after this. On September 25, 1506, Philip I died due to fever. His last will stated that he wished to be buried in Granada beside his mother-in-law Isabella. Juana set about his funeral procession in December of 1506, traveling only by night, with hundreds of torches lighting their way, resting in monasteries and nunneries during the day. In January of 1507, the procession stopped its journey when Juana gave birth to her fifth child, Catherine. 4 months later, the procession resumed its journey by night. The procession was once again interrupted when, on August 29th of 1507, Ferdinand intercepted his daughter to discuss the ruling of Castile. Juana surrendered complete control of Castile to her father on the condition that she be granted complete control of her husband's remains, to which Ferdinand agreed. The procession resumed for the final time and stopped only upon their arrival in Arcos in January of 1509. However, Ferdinand requested that Juana return to him in Tordesillas imminently. So, in February of 1509, she set about her return to Tordesillas, but brought her husband's remains with her. Ultimately, Philip's coffin would come to rest in a monastery in Santa Clara, where Juana could see it from a window of her palace that her father had confined her in with her youngest 3 children. Upon her return to Tordesillas, rumors of madness began to swirl around Juana. Juana and Philip's marriage was marred by infidelity and fits of jealous rage. Philip had been called Philip the Handsome and was well documented to have been unfaithful to his wife. Juana was documented to have gone into fits of jealous rage about his infidelity on several occasions. What could have been written off as poor temperament in the past seemed to only bolster the rumors of her madness now. While on her procession for her husband, rumors began to circulate that Juana could not accept her husband's death and would instead open his coffin to speak with his corpse. From then on, Juana was noted to have taken very little part in the governance of Castile. Upon Philip's death, it was formalized that Ferdinand would rule Castile until his death, whereupon Juana's eldest son Charles would reign when he was of age. Juana, despite being Queen of Castile, became an insignificant figure in the government. On January 22nd of 1516, Ferdinand named Juana as heir to all of his territories, but declared that regents would be appointed in her stead until his 16-year-old grandson could ascend his throne. The following day, January 23rd of 1516, Ferdinand II died. Charles swiftly had himself proclaimed king despite the objections of his Castilian advisors about not being king whilst his mother was still living. However, Juana's name and official royal title was present before her sons on official documents from this era, suggesting that Charles recognized his mother's right to the throne, though limiting her actual authority. Slowly, her children grew into adulthood, made politically advantageous marriages, or took their place upon their ancestral throne. Charles becoming King of Spain, and Ferdinand becoming the Holy Roman Emperor. Charles, despite honoring his mother's official title, would not permit his mother to leave her confinement in Tordesillas, and on April 12th of 1555, after 48 years of confinement, Juana I of Castile died alone in her palace in Tordesillas at the age of 75. The truth of Juana's alleged madness is still debated to this very day. Scholars have theorized that she may have suffered from schizophrenia, depression, postpartum depression, or may have been the victim of gross exaggeration in order to further the political gains of her husband, father, and son. Juana's mental health was suspected to have vastly declined after her son's ascension to the throne, as he instructed that no one should visit his mother and that, quote, no good shall come of it, causing decades of forced isolation to have weighed heavily on the queen. Today, a statue of Juana stands in Tordesillas as a reminder of a woman condemned and dismissed by those closest to her, vilified throughout history as a mad woman, but a woman who, in fact, may not have been mad at all. Thank you for joining me today in our library. If you liked this episode and want to see more like it, I invite you to subscribe and give this episode a like. New episodes will be coming every Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you there. Until then, fare thee well. Have a topic suggestion? Let us know what you want to see covered in the comments below. All sources utilized in writing of this episode are linked in the description below. This episode was written and recorded by Elizabeth Barker. All research conducted was conducted by Elizabeth Barker. Editing and sound by Elizabeth Barker.